Welcome back to MVM. Today I am bringing you a sponsored preview. This one is for Masters of the Night by Ares Games. This is a game where you're going to be playing as a cooperative family of vampires coming to a new city and trying to regain your power and take over the city by completing an ancient ritual. Meanwhile, you're going to have a limited amount of time to carry this ritual out before the Inquisition catches you, and also you're going to have secret agents spread out of the city who are vampire hunters trying to kill you and stop you from completing this ritual. Now, I do have this game already set up here in front of me, and you're going to see the 9 city tiles out here that make up the city. They're going to be laid out in this specific order. Now, it's key to know that no matter how many players you have, you're always going to use 9 city tiles. And you can also use a variable number of vampires. The difficulty of this game increases based on the number of vampires you have. It's generally suggested to give 1 vampire per player. If you have smaller player counts, you're playing solo, you can play more than 1 vampire per player. What's important to notice is there is a distinction between the vampire and the player. For example, you're going to be taking turns in a turn order by passing around this goblet token. And this goblet token is going to move clockwise around the table. And you'll notice that I have these vampire cards set out in a very particular order. That's going to dictate whose first turn it is to act and who is the active vampire for that turn. Now, when you are controlling the active vampire, you are only allowed to control that vampire. You don't have a turn where you can switch back and forth between them or anything like that. So that's important to know as you're watching me describing the game. So each of these vampires is represented by this player aid here. And this player aid is going to show you a power level here on the side that's indicated by this token. Now, when you start off the game, you start with a 0 power level. You're going to have to increase this power level by finding and defeating or killing agents on the board. As you defeat these agents and drink their blood, you're going to gain more power, which is going to give you more actions that you can take, ultimately leading to being able to do that ritual. Now, each one of these basic actions here is going to start at the beginning of the game unlocked. You have your basic actions and they each have an AP cost. Each character is going to start with 2 action points, and that can be augmented by finding relics or certain other abilities, but you're going to have 2 action points to spend across these abilities. Now, you're going to be using your tokens out here on the board and manipulating these different board effects. You'll notice that each vampire out here has 2 sides. They have their normal side, and then they have their drained side. A vampire can be drained if they ever run out of blood. Each character is going to start with 2 of these blood tokens. This is kind of like almost like a health tracker. Your vampires can never die, however, they only become drained. So as you gain blood and lose blood, you'll be able to do special abilities and spend them on things like that. So that's important to note, that you're going to want to always make sure that your vampire has these blood tokens. Secondly, you're going to notice this player board here in the center. This is the veil tracker that's going to track how likely it is for your vampires to be seen. Now you'll notice that there is a different player board here for different player counts, or I'm sorry, vampire counts. So this is for a 5 vampire game. It doesn't matter how those are split up between the players. You're going to place the veil tracker on the highest number, and over the course of the game, it's going to drop as the hunters start to discover your presence, and as you start casting spells and doing things that draw attention to the existence of vampires. Eventually, if this token ever gets down to here, vampires are hunted and destroyed, and that is the end of the game. So you have to complete your ritual before this track reaches the end. Also, you're going to see a deck of adventure cards here. Now, these event cards are divided into 3 different categories of strength, with the third being on the bottom, being the most powerful. Each one of these event cards is going to tell you where to put agents out on the board, and it's also going to have a special effect that triggers every turn. When this deck is emptied, it is also the end of the game. So you're going to build this deck by taking a certain number of cards of each one of these difficulties based on how difficult you want the game to be. For example, you could add anywhere from like 4 to 6 cards of any given level. And this is, like I said, the timer for the game. So you're only going to get, something like maybe 12 to 16 turns to complete that ritual before the game is over. The rest of the cards are just removed from the game. You're not going to use them this time. In addition, you're going to notice the relic deck. This relic deck is linked into a specific museum location, And these relics can be stolen by the vampires and used to give them various powers that are printed on there. This is almost like equipment. Each vampire can have 2 of these relics attached to them at any given time, but only if their power level is high enough. So you're going to have to get those kills, increase your power level. It's going to tell you when you can start equipping relics, but you have to come to the museum to equip them. So you'll notice each one of these locations, including the museum, has a very specific action that happens either during the day or the night phase of the game. And that brings me to the kind of the structure of how the game takes place. You're always going to start with the day phase. Now you're going to look at all of these day phase abilities, and you'll see the sun here represents a day phase. A lot of times these day phases are going to refer to minions and agents. So you have these tokens off to the side that you can bring onto the board. You have your minion tokens, which will be spread out somewhere across the board. And you have your agent tokens. And these agent tokens come in 2 forms. You have your hidden agents, who are cowled, and then your exposed agents, who are just pictures of people. Now, when an agent is hidden, you cannot attack it. You don't know that that agent is there. It is working undercover. However, these agents can still attack you. But once they are exposed, they are fair game for you to feed on them and increase your power level that way. So you're actually going to go through each one of these locations and trigger any of these day effects that might trigger. Now, this is a cooperative game. You're going to get to do this based on whoever has the chalice gets to determine the final order of how these are going to resolve. So once all of these locations have been done, you're going to draw your event. Now, your event is going to tell you where to place agents on the board. And you'll see that this grid of 3x3 corresponds to this 3x3 grid here. And you're going to have red X's and blue X's. Now, these X's are going to be based on the vampire count. And you'll see here again on this player board, it's going to show you how many agents to place out. If you're still up here in the Veil track, you're going to put out 2, 2, and 1. Once you're lower, you're going to put out 2, 2, and 2 based on this particular vampire count. So I would place 2 agents here in this red side that are both hidden, and then I get to place 1. I have 2 in one of these, and you get to decide again, and 1 in the other. I could have flip-flopped those. I could have put 1, 2 down there. And then this card is out of the game. 1 takedown on that timer. Once that's all done, the agents are going to potentially fight the vampires. If there are ever 3 agents here in one space, they're going to fight the vampires. Now, combat is done in a very deterministic way in this game. You're going to have a number of dice equal to the number of vampires, and you're going to roll those dice whenever this pool is empty, and you're going to almost build a dice pool. These dice are going to sit off to the side, and they're dice that you're going to draft during combat. Depending on the die that you take, it's going to determine your success in that battle. Now, in day, you are required to start from the bottom number. You are at a huge disadvantage. So if I had a vampire here with these 3 agents, they would attack me here during the day phase before the vampires get to act. Now, since I have to draw the lowest die, I have to draw this 1. And based on what you draw, it's the same for both day and night. If you draw a 1 through 4 die, you're going to lose the blood no matter what. That blood goes away. However, if you draw a 3 through 6 die, you're going to remove an agent in the process. You'll notice there's some overlap there. So basically your lower numbers, you're just losing the blood, but the agent stays. In the middle, you're losing the blood and getting rid of an agent. And at the higher levels, you're just getting rid of the agent. Now, every time you kill one of these agents, you're going to get to increase your power level because you're draining their blood. Also, whenever you would take damage, you can choose to sacrifice a minion that was on that space instead. The minion just goes back to the pile and can be summoned again on your turn. So once you get to a space where the combats are all done, then it is time for the vampires to take their turn, starting with the vampire that has this chalice. Now you can take, again, as many actions as you can afford with your action points, and I said that starts at 2. You're going to look at the list of available actions here and decide how you're going to spend them. Now, some actions are actually free, which includes trading items back and forth, but most are going to cost 1 action point or your whole 2. Now, the basic moves that you're going to be able to take, first of all, is to move locations. You can just move from one location to adjacent location. When you do that, you can take any minions that are with you on that space and move them with you to that new location. If there is an agent that is hidden in that space, you can flip them over and they are now exposed. You'll be able to fight that agent, which is another action you could take that costs 1 action point. Now, fighting at night is the same premise as fighting during the day, but you get to choose any die. So I could choose this 6, and I can just kill the agent flat out. Now, it's important to note that this dice pool is limited. This is not going to refresh until they're all gone. eventually somebody is going to have to draw that one that's rolled. Once it's done, that's when you're actually going to re-roll all of the dice and build the new pool. So that is how fighting works, and that is the main way to get your power up and unlock these new abilities. You can also spend 1 action point to summon a minion out here on your space. Now, minions are going to help hide the existence of vampires. As this track drops down to the 0 marker, you can play your minions. Each minion you play is actually going to increase this track by 1. So if you play a couple minions, you can actually start getting this track up higher. So that's important to note. Now, you can also use these night abilities. Some of these locations I said had day abilities, some of them have night abilities. If you are there at that location, you can fulfill whatever the night ability says. So this says spend an AP to regain blood up to your maximum and increase your health or power by 1. So you actually gain a power as well. So all of these locations have different abilities. You'll notice the cathedral actually has both a day and night ability as well. So you're going to be able to do those based on where you're located. And as you power up, you're going to gain some more actions, including hunting. Hunting just is going to give you blood power, but it's free to do. You don't have to kill anything. You're just going to get a blood back for doing that. You can also take a relic. So once you get up to a certain level, you'll be able to go to the museum, draw one of these relics, and place it in front of you. You can only hold a certain number of these relics. They're going to come aside, and they're going to give you an ability that carries over for the rest of the game. Eventually, you'll earn the ability to carry a second relic, but once you have 2, that is the most you're going to be able to get. Now, of course, these relics are very powerful, though, so 2 relics is still going to be a very strong amount. Once you get up to your power level 4, you're going to be able to do the wild hunt. Now, doing a wild hunt is going to fill you all the way back up to your maximum of blood tokens. Normally that maximum is 4. You can get some items that actually increase it to 6. So doing a wild hunt is going to give you all of your blood back and allow you to kind of recharge, but it's going to increase suspicion and weaken that veil. So you're actually going to lose 1 veil point on this veil track here. So if every vampire does that, you're going to be going through this veil track very quickly. Now, eventually you'll unlock your special ability. Every character has a special ability printed on the bottom of their player board. It's different for every vampire, and you're going to have maybe a couple different options here you can do to spend blood power or to weaken the veil in order to use your actual actions. Eventually, you're going to get to the full power level 9, which will give you the ability to sigillate an area. Now, each vampire is going to have a sigil that they're given at the start of the game in their player color. In order to complete the ritual, each vampire has to put their sigil out on the board somewhere. Now, a couple things happen when you put your sigil out. First of all, you have to sacrifice a minion in the location you are, and then you get to place your sigil there as long as no other player has placed their sigil. Once you place your sigil, you get an ability that unlocks for the rest of the game. This is triggered. In addition, you are always considered to have majority of minions in that location to trigger these day abilities. So it's important to get these sigils out on the board. Now, you can only do the ritual once every vampire has their sigil out, which is why the game does kind of scale in difficulty based on the number of players. You have to have 5 sigils out on the board if there are 5 vampires. Now, once you do complete that sigil, you'll have to actually enact the ritual to win the game. You have to bring all of your vampires into the same location. Now, this does not have to be a location with a sigil or not. It can just be any location. And each of these vampires has to bring 1 minion with them to the ritual. In addition, there can be no agents in that space. You'll have to expose and defeat whatever agents are there before you can complete the ritual. But once you have this condition met, 5 vampires, 5 minions, no agents, 1 player can take an action to enact the ritual, which is going to turn the control of the city fully over to the vampires and win the game. However, that is a lot harder than it sounds, considering if this track ever hits 0 for even just a second, it's going to end the game. What that means is if you have a move that's maybe going to decrease it by 1 to increase it by 2, it doesn't matter. As soon as it hits 0, game ends immediately. Even if you would win the game, you don't get to. The game is a hard stop when that happens. In addition, if you would ever go to draw one of these event cards and there are none left, the Inquisition catches up to you and they exterminate all the vampires, and it's the end of the game that way instead. So that is Masters of the Night from Ares Games. This is coming to Kickstarter right now. So take a look at their Kickstarter page. You can see all the final versions of all these components and see kind of some of the surprises and things they have in store for the campaign. But as always, thank you guys for watching, liking, subscribing. Please leave some comments, ask some questions, let us know what you think about this game, and we will see you next time.